So I was experiencing kind of an odd issue with my Proxmox setup here. I've got a 3-node cluster here, and right now I'm logged in on the web UI on Proxmox 2. I wanted to open up the console on a VM that's on one of the other nodes. So in this case, it's Home Assistant on Proxmox, this node. When I go to the console, I would get this failed to connect to server with the noVNC default console, which is weird because I know this thing is working. I know Home Assistant is running. So I was surprised why that was not connecting. So I tried one of the other VMs on that node, this Unify controller, got the same thing. And I said, well, that's weird. And so what I did is I logged in to this node over here, into the web UI of this node. And if I go to Home Assistant, go to the console, it works. I can get the console as long as I'm logged into the same node on the web UI. So that was very puzzling to me. I don't know why all of a sudden started doing that. So I did a lot of Googling about this, found a lot of very esoteric solutions to it, most of them involving and assuming that it's an SSH-based problem. And it actually is an SSH-based problem, but not in the way that I thought it was. There's a lot of solutions on the forums saying you got to refresh your certificates and do all kinds of crazy stuff. It kind of makes your brain explode. But as it turns out, the solution was really, really stupid. Let me show you what happens when I go to the main node here and open up a shell. See this thing here? This is just a cool little thing I like to do in all my login shells called fast fetch. And it just, when I log in, it shows me all the stats of the system I'm on. It's just a way for me to clearly know what system I'm logging into and just get an overview of the resources on it. Well, as it turns out, that was the reason why this doesn't work. Because here's how this works. So fast fetch is just a binary. If you have it installed in the system, you type fast fetch, it just runs. But in order for it to appear when I log in, I have to add it to my .bashrc file, which is that simple command in the bashrc. And then when I log in, I get that. So the reason why this is the cause of all this problem is apparently, let's go back to the other Proxmox 2 node here. What's happening here is that noVNC is trying to do a key exchange or an authentication via SSH from Proxmox 2 to Proxmox. So I'll open up a shell on Proxmox 2 and I'll try to SSH into the other Proxmox node there. So if I SSH into that other node, it works, which proves that my SSH keys are working. So I don't have to log in with a password. And then the same deal goes with if I log into that shell on Proxmox 1, and then I try to SSH into Proxmox 2, it works. So there's nothing wrong with the SSH keys. Everything is set up properly for passwordless connections both ways. So what's happening here is noVNC, this noVNC thing, does use SSH behind the scenes to authenticate and connect across these nodes. So what's really happening is like whatever mechanism noVNC is using under the hood to do that, it's kind of choking on, it's expecting output from a typical shell login. But because I got this fast fetch thing in, every time it tries to log in via SSH, it gets all this stuff. And as far as it's concerned, it doesn't know what the hell that is. It's not expecting this information. So the simple solution to that was to remove it from my bashrc file. So now when you log into the shell, we get the default. What it expects is it expects nothing. And if I do the same on Proxmox 2, we log into that shell again. Now we get the default login shell. So now I am on Proxmox 2 now, and I want to open up the console on Proxmox node. Now it works. And that's really all it took. I didn't have to do any kind of crazy shenanigans with SSH and PVE, CM, all that kind of stuff. It was just that, which is really stupid. But that's a good lesson to learn when you're working with these things, trying to troubleshoot. Why is this not working? Obviously, you look at the logs, and that's why I kind of finally figured this out. When you look at the logs and see what's going on, you can tell that it's expecting something, but it's not getting what it expects. So obviously, some of these tools expect a default output from a SSH connection. And if it logs in via SSH and then you spit back with something else from your bashrc file, it's going to choke. And that's the reason why that didn't work. And the simple solution was to remove that one single line of fast fetch from my bashrc. So before you go down too much of a rabbit hole with messing around with SSH keys and certificates and all that kind of crap, check that first. Make sure that you haven't done anything silly like that in your bashrc file. And hopefully that's the solution to the problem. I wish I knew that before I figured it out, because I went down that big rabbit hole of configurations and all kinds of crazy stuff. All it took was removing one line from my stupid bashrc file. That was it. So I can live without the fast fetch if it means that I can use console. The other workaround, obviously, though, is Xterm.js does work. I'm not sure why it wasn't working on my Home Assistant VM, but if Xterm.js was available to you, that at least that works. So that's the other workaround. But in order to get it right, get rid of that crap in your bashrc file.